In a lot of our videos, we've talked about ground reaction forces and how we want to take advantage of those to create a powerful golf swing and get the face consistently lined up with our target. But today what we're going to talk about is what happens between the backswing and the downswing and how we create and use those ground reaction forces via the transition in our golf swing. So if you're somebody who struggles getting the power to the ball during the transition and downswing, make sure to watch this video. So when we think about the transition, generally we're fighting one of two things. We're either getting way too underneath the plane or we're getting way too across the plane or over the top. So when we think about a plane, which is generally how most people view the backswing, we have to understand how the club is being moved through time and space. But more importantly, we have to realize that the faster we swing the golf club back, the faster we're going to have to transition and get the golf club back to the ball. So this transition is very, very important in the golf swing, and we're going to look at why a lot of golfers tend to struggle in the transition in particular. So one of the biggest problems in transition for most golfers is that they tend to get over the top, and you hear a lot of golfers describe that feeling when talking about their golf swing. And the reason that's happening tends to be, I think, a lot to do with kind of the mislabeling of how we use this arm. So when we look at our trail arm, I'm a right-handed player, so if we're talking about my right arm or my trail arm, what we need to realize is that our right arm is slightly different than how we think about it. And what I mean by this is generally we reach and grab things and we think about our fingers in our hand being the beginning of our arm. But our fingers in our hand is actually the end of our arm. The right arm actually begins here at the sternoclavicular joint where the sternum and the collarbone meet. And that is actually the beginning of our trail arm assembly. So if you think about what moves first in transition, so once again, we're moving the golf club back to the top of our golf swing. When we think about actually getting the club moving in the correct direction, we don't want the hand to be what moves first or the club, because that would be the end of the trail arm assembly. We actually want to get the beginning or the sternoclavicular joint to actually move towards the golf ball first. Now that's a very interesting feeling for most golfers because it tends to feel very over the top. But what we're going to look at next is how over the top and shallow really are related to the beginning and end segment of the arm not moving in the correct sequence. So for a lot of golfers, over the top seems to really be the major issue that they feel like they struggle with the most in transition. So the reason that tends to happen is when we're setting up to the golf ball and getting ready to swing and going to the top of our swing, what we tend to see happen is that when we fire the sequence to change direction, what ends up happening is we try to get the club head moving first in transition, which is what moves the club head across the quote-unquote plane and allows for it to get very, very steep in transition. So if we understand that we're moving it in the wrong sequence, we kind of have to think about what's happening when that happens. So all of a sudden, if I get to the top of my golf swing and I move my hands and club head first, what's actually happening to our sternoclavicular joint? Well, it's not actually gaining towards the target and moving first, rather it's actually moving backwards, because as I take my hands and move them that way, I can feel my sternoclavicular being pulled down and towards my right foot. So it's actually causing my right arm to want to drop and tuck. And when I get my right arm dropping and tucking, I get a very stuck sensation in my golf swing. And that's where we tend to see the club head having to turn the corner and coming over the plane, so to speak, early in transition. And it tends to be because we don't get the sternoclavicular joint moving towards the target to start the transition. So for our friends that tend to be pretty steep, we've talked about that a little bit, and it's because we tend to get the club head and the hands kind of moving first in transition, and that tends to cause their problem with getting steep too early in transition. But for our friends who have been steep, maybe they figured out how to try to shallow that in transition. And what we tend to see there is more or less the same issue. However, it plays out completely different in appearance. So what I mean by this is if once again, I get set up into my golf posture Okay, and now I'm in a position to where I go to the top. What we want to think about now is that if I hang on with my wrist and hands and try to shallow by moving the shoulder down, once again, I'm moving my sternoclavicular joint down and backwards, and we can see that the club head actually isn't getting steep, rather is getting underneath and stuck, and now we've created a completely different issue, but an issue nonetheless. So for a lot of us, what we want to start thinking about is the sequence in which we move and transition. So when we talk about a sequence, it's kind of like creating lag. And lag is just one joint preceding another, and that's what creates a lag. So it's a very simple concept, but we have to know which pieces move in which order. So as we've identified, the sternoclavicular joint is where the sternum and the collarbone joins, and that is the beginning of the trail arm assembly. So when I get into my posture and I get to the top of my swing, I actually want to get the sternoclavicular joint moving towards the target. Now, when you feel this, it feels incredibly over the top, and you'll feel this area right here kind of puff up, and now we've got some tension on the right arm. It's still very engaged, and this is very puffy, my right pectoral muscle. So I'm actually moving the sternoclavicular joint forward, but my forearm, because I'm not throwing and moving out of sequence, the club is shallowing. So we're still able to access the external rotation of the trail shoulder, even with my sternoclavicular joint leading the way. So I'm still able to shallow this club, but then from there, my shoulder, the next joint, is moving towards the ball as far as it can. And now we can see my elbow is back to the middle. So now it's not going to be hard once I release the club to find the ground in front of the ball and control low point and get low point moved forward. And now I've let everything go in sequence, elbow, then wrist, then hand, over here. So now I've actually released my whole right arm assembly in the correct sequence, and now we're going to be able to use our transition to get all the speed we create in our golf swing in gear into the ball. So now that we understand the concept of how the trail arm assembly is put together, now we have to take it from concept to application. So I'm going to show you a really easy drill that you can definitely do when you're practicing that's going to help you reinforce this concept into a feeling which you can use when you play golf. So everybody has their golf bag, so all we're going to do is we're just going to get set up right next to our golf bag here. So I'm going to get as close to this thing as I can, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and get my posture. Okay, so I've got good posture here. I feel good about being set up here. Like how this looks. So from here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take the golf club to the top. Okay, so I've got the golf club up to the top now, and now I'm going to drive my right, or my trail sternoclavicular joint towards the golf bag. So you can see my left side hasn't moved towards the golf bag. However, my sternoclavicular joint has. So now when I release the club, it goes around the golf bag. So now I've been able to create width in addition to getting my sternoclavicular joint moving towards the target. So a nice little benefit of this is that the face isn't shutting near the ball, and that's going to help us manage our ball flight a whole lot better. So in summation, if you're driving in bumper-to-bumper traffic and you should happen to tell somebody that they're number one, keep in mind that the finger you're using to tell them that isn't the beginning of your arm, rather is the end of your arm. And we want to make sure that we use the beginning of our arm to play golf with. So at the end of the day, very simple idea here. Just want to go ahead and take the golf bag, get it out, work this drill a little bit, and you should be able to start getting your trail side to work more towards the ball in transition, which is going to help you get that power that you create to the golf ball during your swing. So thanks so much for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed this video. Please be sure to subscribe. And if you're interested in working with myself, we now have a new option available via Skillest. So if you search Michael Dutro on Skillest App, you'll be able to get in touch with me and we can talk about making your game better as well. So thanks so much, and until next time, keep grinding.